Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. You might remember a while ago we talked about a few unusual asset classes. There's a whole range of alternative assets out there, and we explored some of the more left field ones, shall we say, from tequila and vinyl records to buying domain names. Today we're going back to Stefan von Imhof, the co-founder of alternative investing community fund alts.co, for a lesson on investing in art. Of course, this is general information only, and you should certainly seek professional advice before making any investment decisions. Stefan, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Hey, great to be here again. Thank you.
So why is art such an interesting space for investors, particularly at the moment?
Well, it's funny. You mentioned, left field investments, right? And I'm not actually sure that art falls into the left field. It's
True.
Depending on how you look at it, I think art is either the oldest new alternative investment or the newest old alternative investment.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of like right in the middle. So it has a lot of history. Wealthy investors have been collecting fine art for hundreds of years. But along, with other alternative assets like farmland and wine and whiskey, there's been a Cambrian explosion of new platforms that allow retail investors to invest in fine art over the past 4 or 5 years. So it's definitely having a moment right now.
Okay. So what's considered, I suppose, the equivalent of blue chip companies, blue chip art? What is blue chip art?
Well, art is usually there's kind of two distinct buckets. There's classical and there's contemporary. So basically think of contemporary art as mid-20th century and onward.
Mm-hmm.
Blue chip it comes down to a few different things. What you really want to look for is you want to look for artists that have a long, strong history of auctions, right? Artists who have been exhibited in major galleries, institutions, and whose work is held by major collectors. So provenance is very important here. Blue chip would not be someone like Banksy, for example. So yes, Banksy is very famous and he's internationally famous. And there's a lot of people that collect Banksy, but the Banksy paintings are more vulnerable to volatility. It's not actually as established as someone like, Basquiat, for example.
Okay, so I'm actually going to jump in. So Banksy, because you're going to have to teach me some of this. So he's the street artist?
Yeah, Banksy's famous for, I don't know if you saw like the banana taped to the canvas or the exploding self-destructive art that he's kind of like a very, very postmodern artist. Yeah.
Yep.
That's Banksy. And then someone with a little bit more, blue chip would be someone like Basquiat. So Basquiat is from the 70s in New York scene. And he basically tackled race and a lot of social commentary. His art is very intense and, in your face. And, he had a short career, but, he died young. And after he died, his pieces have started to really skyrocket and they've been elevated ever since. And so he's someone who, you consider like a contemporary blue chip artist.
Okay. Now, you wrote a piece recently, and it's fascinating, and I recommend anyone that would like to go and read it if you're interested in investing in art. And one of the many things I found interesting was sort of the process of it. And you talk about the process in it. But then things like Prince, you describe Prince as being underrated.
Yeah, Prince, it's interesting you picked up on that. Prince they kind of have a bad rap in the world. If you don't know much about it, you might think, oh, it's not an original. Like, why does that matter? But the fact is that for blue chip artists, releasing Prince is a very big deal. And they don't just, it's not like you're kind of like your friend who's an artist who just everything they do, gets released as a print, and that way everyone can afford it for $500. It's not like that at the high end of the world. Prints are rare. Prints are it's very rare to see them in the market and see them in the wild. It's also frowned upon. It's kind of getting maybe a little too deep into the weeds, but it's actually frowned upon to flip prints. And so
why is that?
Because the auction houses want to keep the prices and the demand controlled and high, and it's meant to be enjoyed. Truly, that is one of the fundamental things about art is that the type of people who collect art, they're not, unlike many other asset classes, there's not actually a big flipping culture with art. Like you're supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to get personal enjoyment from it and showcase it and keep it for a long time. Like I said, provenance is a really important part of art collecting. So yeah.
Stay with me, Stefan. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Stefan von Imhof, co-founder of alternative investing community fund alts.co. Well, I mean, another one thing you talk about, young contemporary artists. Why are people drawn to young contemporary artists? And is it actually a good investment? I mean, it must be a risky investment.
It's risky. I mean, young contemporary is a way to get into contemporary, but you're basically placing a bet on the artist's future. These are artists who show a lot of promise, but they don't really have a strong multi-decade history of strength in the numbers. And so, it's risky. It's volatile. We don't, for our fund, we don't have any young contemporary. All of ours are old contemporary.
Okay. And then kind of along those lines, you talk about underrepresented and female artists. It's another area you've picked out as undervalued. I suppose, again, they're high risk, probably more opportunity, but still high risk.
Not necessarily. So underrepresented isn't necessarily high risk. I don't think those two things they're not really that related. I mean,
Okay. Yep.
example of someone underrepresented would be, a lot of like contemporary female artists. So like for our fund, we've bought a piece from Bridget Riley, and Bridget Riley is a British modern artist who, the best way to describe her work is it lends itself extremely well to a digital age today.
Yep.
But it was far before. This was created far before digital age began. So, her stuff, you look at it and it looks like it was digitally created, but this is back in the 70s. And it was long before, computer software and everything. So, yeah, she's, at the time she was very groundbreaking. And today, it's clear that her pieces speak for themselves in terms of how society values them over time. And so we do have a small Bridget Riley piece for our fund, which we're very proud of. She's also getting very old. She unfortunately won't be with us for too much longer. And so that does play into things as well.
Now, many of us, when we think about art, many of we less sophisticated people think about art. You always think about the Impressionists. You talk about there is actually an opportunity. It's very difficult to go and buy a Monet, right? Or even part of a Monet, but there are opportunities in lesser known Impressionists.
Yeah, it's interesting. You think of Impressionism and you think of, Monet, Renoir, but there were other Impressionists that just didn't quite, they're not as like the household names as the big ones. So, Pissarro is one, Alfred Sisley. It's a great way to kind of buy Impressionism that, although the history books haven't been as kind to these types of artists, they're still underrated in our minds.
Oh, I'm partnered to someone who studied the Impressionists, and so wherever we go, if there's an art gallery, I find myself looking at Impressionist art of people I had never heard before. So I get that totally, Stefan. Tell me,
funny, like Impressionism is actually how I got into artwork back in middle school. That was really when I started to realize just how intense and interesting and how time consuming it can be to create a masterpiece. So it's funny. I think for me, it was kind of like a gateway drug into the art world.
Yeah. Okay. Now, take me through how fractional art investing works. Really interesting for most people who don't have millions of dollars to invest in art.
Fractionalization is a huge trend in a lot of alternative assets right now, and artwork is absolutely one of them. So with fractionalization, a company will buy a piece at auction. It doesn't have to be at auction, it can be, but they'll buy a piece in full, and then they basically IPO that piece. So in a sense, they fractionalize the piece into shares and sell each of those shares for, it can be as low as, $100 or so. Right. The biggest platform that people may have heard of or should know about is called Masterworks. And, of all the kind of alternative investing fractionalization platforms, Masterworks is really kind of leading the way in terms of educating people on investing in art and investing through fractionalization. I personally have definitely invested with Masterworks, and it's one of my favorite platforms.
Fantastic. What about buying pieces on your own? Is having an art broker important?
You don't have to use a broker. I would definitely recommend it. So you can just go to an auction. There's nothing stopping you from just going to an auction, raising your hand and, committing to a buy. The problem is you're going to pay a buyer's premium, right? When that hammer goes down, they're going to add 25%, right? So that is a lot to stomach for a lot of people. For many, many collectors, that's too much, right? There's also galleries. You can buy from galleries, especially special showings and stuff like that. But if you're really serious about it, just do what we did, which is, find a broker, find a trusted broker. And so we have a lot of folks in our community who are really into art collecting. And one of them, we've developed a great relationship, a gentleman in the UK. And so he is basically our go-to guy. He'll give us ideas for, what's hot, what's coming next. We talk to him about once every few months or so. He's our broker. He's our guy. And I would definitely recommend others do the same.
Now, if anyone's interested, so it's Alts Academy. If you Google Alts Academy, and it's the second issue of Alts Academy, fascinating look at how to invest in art or why you should invest in art, everything. Stefan, you wrote that piece, I presume, did you? Because I got glued to it.
I'd love to take credit. That was actually my co-founder, Wyatt, who wrote that one. So.
You can take credit as far as I'm concerned. Look, Stefan, thank you very much today for talking to us this morning on Fear and Greed.
Oh, thank you.
That was Stefan von Imhof, co-founder of alternative investing community fund alts.co, alts.co. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Remember, this is general information only, and you should seek professional advice before making any investment decision. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.